If shiurim I can give in reviewing for ourselves, refreshing ourselves, or perhaps re-knowing for ourselves a very well-known story. This is one of the best examples of, if we just look into the text and see what the text tells us, it gives us a little, not a little, a very, very different story from what we have been taught. Chazal see in the story different things. That was the story that is primarily told from the time we've been very little. This is a story of Yosef and his brothers. But when we look at the text, we find that not quite the story that the text tells us. I believe it's very important because I think it opens up different understanding about the relationships that were in that family. And rather than letting all psychiatrists have a wonderful time talking about familiar problems, that here is a wonderful, perfect example of a family that's being torn apart and is destroyed. We have a better idea that it isn't quite as simple as that, or to you and me, as bad as that. I'll just give out the sources one night. The story that we have already begun to go through was the beginning of the Yosef brothers story. And that is when, first of all, there's built up a resentment, jealousy perhaps, of the brothers against Yosef, clearly seen by the favoritism shown by Yaakov to his son Yosef. Why is that favoritism? I think the Torah tells us very clearly, and it's very understandable. Yaakov's marriage to Leah was because he was a fine person. It's not the choice he had. He chose to marry Rachel. And Lavan promised Rachel. Rachel bitcha haktana. Yaakov makes it very clear to his future father-in-law that he wanted Rachel. In other words, not Leah. It's only after the marriage that he realizes that the woman he had married was Leah, and he runs to Lavan and says, "What'd you do? Hello, berachel avadati imach. I've labored for you for 7 years. In effect, I slaved for you, but I wasn't a slave because I knew what my payment would be. My payment would be Rachel. And you didn't give me my payment. You gave me Leah." And of course, what was Lavan's response? Who remembers? What excuse did he give?
We don't marry the younger one before the older.
Very good. Yeah. You understand what he was saying. He says what you said. Lo ye'asa chen b'mkom, he said. We don't do that in this place to how can I put it, to favor the younger before the older. We have to allow the older to get married first. Now, we would call this in a good way of putting it, in a good Yiddish term, a shtoch. Why am I saying it was a shtoch? Because he was saying, in effect, to Yaakov, he says, look, I don't know what you do in your place. Maybe you sell birthrights and things like that. But in our place, the older one gets it first. What happened with Yaakov and Esau? Right? Yaakov buys the birthright. They sell off the other birthright, and they make Yaakov as if he was the eldest son. So what Lavan is saying, I would say subtly, but not so subtly, is that Lo ye'asachem b'mkomenu. We don't do that in my place. Almost as if saying, I don't know how you do this in your place, but in our place, we allow the eldest one to take precedence. That's the answer he gives, which when you read the Torah in those terms, you begin to say, oh, you see what he's doing now. In effect, he's saying, this whole thing, you sell birthrights. We don't do that here. We have respect to the elders. So anyway, that little stuff that he gives, in effect, is the excuse that he gives to Yaakov that's why he's marrying Leah. Yeah, I know. So Yaakov could have said to him, hey, you maneuver you. You could have told me that when I said I want to marry Rachel. You could have told me, well, first you have to marry Leah. You didn't tell me that, did you? That's the point. But the point and the language that the Torah uses, Lo yeyasachein bimkomeinu, we don't do this in our place, is precisely saying that in your place you sell birthrights. We don't do that. That's wrong. So that was what his excuse was, why he gave him Leah and not Rachel. So of course he said, but you know what? Malei shivu azot, another often misunderstood thing. He said, just fill this, this Shiva Yemei Mishteh, what we would call, what you have the 7 days of celebration, the Sheva Brachas, right? And then you can marry Rachel. So he marries Rachel not 7 years later, a week later. He marries Rachel 1 week later on the promise that he would now work another 7 years. That's what he does. Okay, fine. At any rate, in the eyes of Yaakov, therefore, yes, Leah he's married to him, but his real wife to him was Rachel. Rachel was his wife, the one he loved, the one he wanted to marry from the very beginning. And in fact, we see that later on, I believe in this story, where in Parshat Vayigash, I believe it is, I'm sorry, I know it is, that when Yehuda is pleading with this viceroy, not knowing it was Yosef at the time, and he tells the story of what happened when he went home. He says, my father said, Temidatem kishnayim yoldali ishti. You know that my wife gave birth to 2 sons. What do you mean my wife? He had 4 wives. Certainly 2. He says, my wife had 2 sons. What wife had 2 sons? Rachel, Yosef and Binyamin. So even the Yehuda, the son of Leah, recognized that in his father's eyes, the one real wife, the main wife, was Rachel. And therefore, now back to my original thing, why is it that he showed favor to Yosef? Because he saw Yosef as what? The what?
His son of his favorite wife.
Oh yeah, but more importantly than that, the first son of his wife, meaning what? Bechor. The Bechor. Yeah, he had older people, but that was the Bechor. Now, it's interesting, by the way, that at the end of his life, in Vayechi, he blesses Reuven. He says, Reuven Bechori ata. He says, Reuven, you are my eldest. But the fact is, he also said, in Yosef, and we see it, we're saying it now, Bechor Shoro Hadar Lo. That's Moshe's blessing. We're going to say it on Simchat Torah. And if you happen to be in shul this morning, that's also part of the first Aliyah. So that was, Yosef was also the Bechor. And in Divrei Hayamim, also, Aleph, it also says there that Reuven was the Bechor. But either way, in the eyes of Yaakov, Yosef was the Bechor, and therefore this whole idea with the Technicolor cloak that he gave to Yosef was not unnecessary. He favored him, not necessarily because he loved him, but it does say ahivo, he loved him, did, but because the fact that he was a Bechor in his eyes. And the Bechor has certain privileges that others do not. So that when I spoke to you before, I believe I said that Yosef he gave him the ketonet pasim, that we always think is a multicolored cloak, really is probably not that. The whole of pasim, the idea that is pas is not colors, not at all. It's later, or even but that's found out later on, and therefore, as one thing I says, pas yadav. You know what that means? Even in the Torah, that means the palm of the hand. And the ketoret pasim means he had a cloak or a coat that went all the way. There was long sleeves that went down, and went down to the feet also. Why is that significant? Because when you're working in the fields, you have shorter things, because otherwise you're going to rip your clothes. It's easier for the boo-boo to get better than it is to go to the tailor and have everything fixed up every single day. So it was the people, how do I put it, overseers, who were watching who's going to, they're overseeing what the work that's being done. They had the long sleeves. And that's exactly what it says in the Torah, not about the sleeves, but about Yosef. It says at the beginning of Vayeshev that he was not that he was shepherding the sheep. That's not what it says there. It says the sisters wherever, it says there, let's see if I can go through it. Yosef hayashvas now haya ro'eh et echav, right? No, that he was shepherding with his brothers, and he was placed in effect in charge of them. Now you understand their resentment of him. The snot-nosed kid of 17 years old is telling his older brother, who was about 23 at the time, that do this, oh, you're not doing this. And he came back and he told her, Papa, you should know what they did today. They did that. So that was the whole problem and the whole friction there that builds up. And to make it worse, of course, as we know the story, he not only lorded over them, but he said, and I'm going to lord over you. Because I had dreams, right? That I'm going to be. So there you have the resentment. It builds up. And that's what happens. All right. Now we come to now. The sheep are being shepherded and they are grazing. Where are they being grazing? You know where they were at this time, basically in Hebron. That's where Yaakov and the guys went. And it says there that they were shepherded. Where was the grazing land? Well, anyway, they eventually went to Dotan, but eventually it was Shem up there. Now, did you ever ask the question, do you know what the distance is between Hebron and Shem? Especially, before you have the buses, right? Before the Ravkov. They had to walk there, and you walked.
They rode an animal.
They rode an animal. Great. Okay, so it wasn't an hour and a half. Okay, so it was 2 days, 3 days. There's no grass between Hebron and Shechem.
And Dotan isn't Shechem anyway.
Oh, and eventually go to Dotan, you're right.
Dotan's another.
It's nearby, but it's not. What's it doing there? So let me explain this to you also. This is all as trying to paint the picture for you. Let me explain to you why I say this. I think this is Rabbi Nun who takes this approach, which makes so much sense. When Yaakov came and he had loads of cattle when he left from Lavan's house, it says that very clearly. He had used. What did he do? He set up different areas where his flocks were being grazed, and he appointed other people there, who would watch over it. And every once in a while, he would send the brothers, make sure everything's being done properly. That's what the whole point was. So that's why he has to send them to Hebron, from Hebron all the way to Shechem, because that's one of the areas where they had the grazing area for at least one part, if not the bulk of his grazing land for the flocks. Good. That explains tons of things. It explains, for example, what happens when he settles down in Shechem, and Dinah is raped, and the whole thing, and he's afraid that people will attack him, and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, no, all that was, at that time he had already settled down there and had his flocks. So anyway, that's why they had to go to Shechem. So they go to Shechem, and then he sends Yosef to say, see how they're doing. Now here's something I mentioned last time, I'm going to say it again. This is another thing that is very interesting. Remember when we asked, and we're going to go again, how come Reuven never knew of the sale of Yosef? Brother sold him. Why did he know about it? He comes to the pit to save Yosef and to take him out of the pit. Remember that part of the story? And he came running back, panicked to his brothers. Yosef enenu, v'ani ana ani ba. Yosef is not there. He's gone. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? And they never tell him, hey, Ruby, what are you worried about? We sold him. So what do Chazal say? Why doesn't he know? So they have a midrash that says there were people who would go back to see the Yaakov, and then that was his day to be with Yaakov. So if, as it's true, the distance between Shechem and Hebron is at least 2 to 3 days walk, that means back and forth, it is almost a week to get there, see, everything's good, oh, Dad, it's okay, and then come back, right? And, by the way, if they were coming back regularly, why does Yaakov have to send Yosef, find out what's happening over there, if they were coming back anyway? Clearly not, by the way. So if that's what's happening, do you think Reuven, who always had a plan to save Yosef, did he not? Did he not say, I will take him out of the pit. I'll make sure that they don't kill him, right? That was his plan. Do you think he would have said, oh, I'll keep him in the pit, and I'll spend a week down with Dad, and he'll come back, I'll still be fine. I've got kind of sense to that. That doesn't make no sense at all. It makes no sense. That's why it's hard to really accept that view. And the text doesn't say that happened. That's exactly the point I'm trying to make. Okay? So we'll go back to about where I left off, maybe a little before. And I kept you up to date, but I also filled in a lot of stuff I hadn't mentioned last time. Yosef goes to look for his brothers, goes to Shechem, right? He ain't there. So somebody, there was some guy in the thing, and he said, have you seen my brothers? Now let me ask you a question. Who's going to know the brothers from what? You know who I am? Have you seen my brothers? What are you, Joe Schmo? I mean, I know you're Joe, but I don't know Schmo.
To ask strangers?
Exactly.
He's not a simpleton.
And they weren't strangers. They knew the family because they had the flocks over there. They knew him from before. So he could go and ask somebody, I'm the Schwartz family, you know me, I'm the Jacobson. Yeah, this is our thug. So he can answer, oh, I saw them. And they said, let's go to Dotan. That's how they knew. Now this all makes more sense. The whole story makes more sense when you realize that they weren't just strangers, and they didn't schlep their sheep all the way from Hebron up to Shechem. No. They had set up flocks there. There are people watching it for them. They were a well-known family. When they came, they said, no, it's over here. Does not make so much sense to you. Does not make more sense. now the story now looks, see, I can put that now into the book. I said, oh, that now people will read the book and say, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So he goes there, he finds that they're not there, they go to Dotan, and on his approach to Dotan, the brothers see him come, right? And they say, Hinei bala chalamot halozez, but here comes the dreamer. So now they have their plan to get rid of him. Remember, that build up resentment, and perhaps more than that, more than the jealousy, is his commitment that, I'm going to be lording over you because I had these dreams. Dreams are very important, especially in the ancient world, and especially in Sefer Bereshit. I could go through that, the dreams that start from Yaakov's dreams all the way to Pharaoh's dreams, it's a dreamland. So it was very important. People saw that, and it was significant. Okay, he's going to go. And they say, let's throw him, let's kill him. Let's kill him, and then we'll see what's going to happen with his dreams, his supposed dreams. Those dreams won't come true, that's for sure. And it's at that point that Reuven said, you know what? Whatever they say, I'll make sure. He says to them, he says, first of all, hey, we don't have to be bloodthirsty murderers. If we throw him into a pit, and we don't do anything, so he'll die. But at least we will not be directly involved in murdering him. We just thought that he won't live, but we wouldn't murder him. That was his plan. Why? And we all know why. Why does he say that? Because now he knows he'll be able to save him. That's the plan. They take off his fancy schmancy coat. They throw him into a pit, it seems a well-known pit, because it says Habor Hazeh, it goes into that pit. There was one they knew. And he's yelling and screaming undoubtedly. They throw him down there. There's no way he can get out. And then they sat down. They sat down to eat. I always told you that's the most painful part of the story, in my opinion, and that is there's Yosef screaming and yelling for his life to his brothers, and they went and had a lunch. That's right. That's what I said. Pizza. Right. They sat around to have lunch. Very painful to think of that. That's something else. But anyway, it's during that time they see far away a caravan of international traders, the Ishmaelim, who are going up from north, from Babylonian area, up there, coming down on the Via Mara, which is the route along the ocean, along the sea, down to Egypt. And they brought usually the spices from up there and things that were quite valuable for them, and they bring back whatever. Egypt, it's the two great empires at the time, and they were trading with each other. They were either trading with each other or fighting with each other. This is trading now. And that's what they did. And when they see that from afar, as I think last time you brought a map, somebody was showing that from Dotan or Shechem, you could see down on because it's up high, you look down on the road and you see they're coming. They're a distance away, knowing they're going to come closer and get closer to them. They stay there waiting for the caravan to come. Unbeknownst to them, at that same time, there are other traders, local traders, Midyanim, or Midanim, as it were. And they hear the screams of Yosef, and they run over. This guy fell into a pit. Yachts. We can grab him, and we have a slave. So they come and they pull him out. And that's where we get the crucial part that I was showing you in the source sheet. source number, which I showed you last time. Oh, I didn't have numbers here. I'm sorry. But it is on the second page, the second source. Then Midianite merchants passed by, right? Again, they're eating. Yosef is screaming from a pit. The Ishmaelites, international traders, are still caravanning down by the seashore. And now, Anashim Midyanim, Midianite merchants, passed by. Socharim, meaning there were traders. And they hear the screaming. Vayim shechu, so they drew Yosef out of the pit. And they sold Yosef to the Ishmaelim for 20 shekels of silver. And they brought Yosef into Egypt. So here is where we get, as I say, crucial difference of the story that we've all learned. And that is the pronouns of they. It says, merchants passed by and they drew Joseph out of the pit. The clear indication is the Midianites who passed by drew Joseph out of the pit. There are others who say, and Chazal say, no, I mean, it's referring to the brothers. Now, are the brothers even mentioned in this pasuk? Not at all. Not at all. They're in the last sentence, but not in this sentence. So in this verse clearly refers to the, because if it were the brothers, it would have mentioned them. It would have said, "Vayimshechu ha'achim," and Echav vayal. They would say, and the brothers pulled them out. But when it says the merchants, the Midianite merchants passed by and they drew Yosef out of the pit. That means the merchants did that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even mentioned that the merchants were there at all. They would have said that, and they sold Joseph to the Midianites. Who sold him to the Ishmaelites? The Midianites. Yeah. And the Midianites then, they brought Yosef into Egypt because they were the ones who were going down. And it says that clearly before. It says he saw Arachat Yishmaelim. He saw the caravan of Ishmaelites going down, it says Mitzrayim, going down to Egypt. So we knew that's what we're talking about. The Ishmaelites were going down to Egypt. So they sold it to the Ishmaelites who brought them to Egypt. That's what it is. Now therein changes everything. That's what changes everything in the story that was so familiar, but not necessarily what Torah is saying. It wasn't the brothers who sold him. It wasn't the brothers who took him out of the pit. Yes, they put him into the pit, but they were not. And that explains the entire reaction of Reuven. When the brothers say, hey, there are Ishmaelim, let's sell them to them. When they get closer, Reuven says, I better get him out of the pit, which I plan to do all the time. I better run and pull him out. He goes running over. Unbeknownst to any of them, the Midianites had beat them to the punch. They had told to take him out of that.
Well, they arrived before Reuben.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Prophet in the pit.
Yeah. So here, Reuven comes back and doesn't see Yosef. What's the first feeling that Reuven has when he suddenly panics, doesn't see Yosef? Well, but what happened to him?
He tore his clothes.
He did. But what does he think about what happened to Yosef?
He was killed.
Ah,
He was eaten.
yes. The assumption is, which was the original assumption when they threw him into the pit, that an animal will come and grab him, and that was the end of it. Whether he'd be dead at the time or before he got dead. The end. He can't get up. An animal can, right?
How does an animal get in and out?
Can you ever? Can you jump up a tree like a cat can? Like a cat can? Of course they can. All these things. Yeah, yeah. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Anyway, see, you caught that. That's good. That's good. You know me already. Yeah. So he's honestly, very, very naively, perhaps, says, if there's no Yosef, Yosef was taken away. And by a wild animal. And he runs back to the brothers, and he says, oh, Yosef's not there. Maybe they ran back to see that indeed he wasn't there. But what's going to be? He says, what's going to be with me? So what did they do? What are we going to do? What are we going to say? They could say, what? Yosef never got here. They don't know who you're talking about.
You mean that's what the brothers were planning to tell
The brother, but what they said, now, we know that he's gone. We put him in the pit. He's not there. We know he's gone. But Papa is never going to believe us. What are we going to say? Nope, never saw him. He'll spend his life searching for Yosef. So, how does one finally, you mourn only for someone who's gone, but unless there's closure, there's always a terrible feeling. I mean, I hate to say it, think about the people whose children are still being held in Gaza with the subhumans there. So, what? It's a terrible thing. Now, they say it was awful, but thank God they're gone. There was closure. We want Papa to have closure. We don't want him to be aggravating demands. He's been collecting Social Security for a couple of years already now. Yeah, he's an old guy. How do we convince him that she's dead? You know what we should do? We have its cloak, so we can show it to him. No, he has to be dead. So we'll slaughter a sheep. We will dip the coat of Yosef. When we bring it back, although we didn't bring it back, we're going to send somebody else to bring it back, and that's what it says. They sent it, right? You're remembering, good.
I just read it.
And then Dad will remember. Will at least have closure, and he'll believe that Yosef is dead. This is a very important part of this story. I know it sounds a middle, but when you see this as the real story, they weren't trying to trick their father. They were trying to ease his pain. But let him know. Well, what would you do?
How could they ease his pain? He lost his bachur.
Right, but how are they going to convince him that he was lost?
But they
How are they going to give him closure?
the loss of any child.
What they could say is that, look, Dad, you see, we threw him into the pit because we wanted to kill him, but then when we came back, he wasn't there. I don't think that would have been very good. It wouldn't be too calm for his father. So they weren't going to say that, but they had to tell him that he's dead. How would I know? I know because, we found this coat.
But it says they sent.
Yes.
We have found this.
Yes, they sent it with the 5 people they sent it with.
Oh, so some of them went back and some.
No, they were all there. They sent it with a group of people they knew from up there. They said, bring us to my father, because we found it, and tell them. And they told them, we found this. It seems to be our brother's thing. They came and said, that's what they said. It says, Hakerna. Do you recognize this? Now, if it was them, the brothers, who were bringing it to Yaakov, they're going to say, do you recognize this? Yutz, you know who this is. You saw it. You know your brother's clothes. You know you hated it.
You said
So-
that the brothers sent a different people.
I don't say that. The Torah says that.
Okay.
The Torah says it clearly. And the Torah says that, Okay, it says later on, it says that they sent it. Unfortunately, I did not put this here as part of the sources. I should have, but it says clearly that they gave it to people to bring it to Yaakov. These people said to this, Hakerna, please, do you recognize this? Hakatonde bin chahi olo. Is this your son's coat or not? And he says, Tonet bin bini, this is my son's clothes. Taraf Yosef. Yosef must have been torn apart by a wild animal, which is exactly what they wanted him to believe. He comes to that decision having seen the coat. And that's what they wanted. And they felt, okay, it was horrible, terrible, it's gone. It's the end of the issue. We never killed him, but we got rid of him, which is what we wanted to do. And Dad understands he was destroyed by an animal. Vigamano. In effect, what they had originally thought, before they said we're going to sell it to the Ishmaelim, that we're going to sell him, we're not going to kill him, we're just going to throw him in a pit. Why? In order that he'd be killed by an animal. So that's exactly what happens in their understanding. So that's what happens. Now, why do I say this is important? Because it is. This now helps us understand what in the world, in the minds of Yosef, the minds of Yaakov, what does Yosef think now? He's taken down to Yerushalayim. What is he thinking? Why is this happening to me? What does he think? Come on. You're Yosef. You're Yosef. You were grabbed from the pit. No, your brothers threw him in a pit. These Midianites come, grab him from the pit, and sell him to the Ishmaelim, and now you're in the Ulpan in Cairo trying to learn Egyptian. You're down now in Egypt. What are you thinking now? What's happened to me? What is he thinking? What do you think is going in his mind, going through him? Yeah.
The chips to fall where they will.
You are 100% correct. They're saying, he doesn't say, oh, I guess they just want to put me here temporarily, but never, the Midianite came and said, no, he says, the brothers told the Midianite, I'm over here, and they took him and sold him. My brothers sold me.
Forget about it, they put him in there originally.
Yes.
He wouldn't have been there for the Midianites if they hadn't put him there.
Oh, yeah, but that's what Yosef is saying.
Yeah.
They've thrown me in the pit so that they could sell me.
No, but you didn't say the brothers told the Midianites. The Midianites.
No, exactly. I'm telling you what Yosef is thinking.
That my brothers must.
Yosef has no idea. He has no idea that Reuven wanted to save him. He has no idea. In his view, as he's scratching away at the size of the pit, and he's pulled out, he assumes, how would these Midianites see me? That my brothers probably told them that. And they're the ones who sold me. So he thinks that they were sold. They sold him. That's very important. That's his view. What does his father think happened?
He was eaten by animals.
As his brothers do as well. What does that help us understand?
That everybody's delusional.
No, not delusional. It was you would think the same thing, and so would I. It's very logical, both of them, what they thought. But everybody asks, why didn't Yosef write home, dear Papa, I'm fine, I'm here. And Yosef is thinking, why didn't my Papa send all of his wealthy people and come to look for me?
Nobody looked for him and he didn't want to.
That's right. Yaakov thought he's dead, so he's not sending anybody. Yosef thought he was sold by his family. What is Yosef thinking?
Family abandoned me.
But what about his father? What is he thinking now?
I think I was told that he didn't want to speak ill lashon hara. He didn't want to reveal to his father what his brothers had done.
Okay, now really, what do you think is happening?
Well, that's a Haredi response.
Exactly right. Now I'm going to get to reality.
He was probably thinking my father could have been part of it.
Why? Did his father know how much his brothers hated him? No. He heard it twice. He yelled at Yosef, stop these dreams. They knew very well.
So his father knew what the brothers thought.
So Yosef thinks.
He sent his son to his brothers, so he thinks that Father knew that my brothers hated me, and yet you
He sent me anyway. Exactly. Why
Why
did he send me?
So my father does this.
Good, exactly. And more than that, let me tell you why. So maybe my father does love me. But I remember, I don't know if you remember this, my great-great-grandfather, this guy TORAH, he had a couple of sons, but yet God only chose one. And you know, Abraham had 2 sons, but he only chose one. The rest did not. Abraham had many sons. Keturah had sons, a whole bunch of them. But many were taken off. Now, my father has 12 sons.
No,
Maybe, but Yaakov had 12 sons. Maybe I'm the one who's not going to be part of this group. If every one of the former generations only had a couple of people who were chosen, and others were not chosen, maybe I was destined to be one of those who's not going to be chosen. And so he says, Isaiah, if that's the case, I'll make it in Egypt. So he didn't go to contact his father, figuring that's his fate. Father doesn't go to see him, figuring that he's dead. So all of this, from we could call of a miscommunication, misunderstanding, or simple, very really understandable things that happen in a simple story, it makes sense that they would think this. And look at what happens.
But it was a created miscommunication.
It was not created. It was a natural thing. It was natural. The brothers didn't create this mistake. They didn't say, we're going to make believe that he was killed. They really thought he was killed.
No, the brothers knew he wasn't killed.
That's not true. They went back to the pit and he wasn't there.
The brothers knew that the Midianites sold him to
No, they did not. That was the whole point. They were eating lunch at the time. They were eating lunch at the time. What did they think? You know what they thought when they saw that. They put him in the pit for the purpose of having him taken off by a wild animal. They came back to the pit to find out he was not there. He was therefore probably taken away by a wild animal who had him for lunch.
They took off his coat before they put him
Yeah. They didn't let them. I'm sure that the coat may have not gone in, well, it wouldn't have been digested well by the animal. Either way, they grabbed it away from him. So that's what I'm saying. These are all, that's why the whole story starts with God, Hashem Bashman Yitzchak. These are all very human decisions, negative ones, bad ones, but human decisions that brought this to happen. It isn't that God made it happen. I would view it as God let it happen. Happens to be what he exactly wanted to happen. But God allowed it to happen. And it is the brothers. Now, like I said last time, no, the brothers aren't going to get Shlishi and Yom Kippur. They weren't wonderful people. The very fact that they thought to kill their brother, whether they did it or not, is enough to give them all the ajada that they're going to have later on. No question about it. But they didn't. They did. They weren't that bad. They were bad enough.
But that was their intention then.
Yes, but they didn't do it. You know what?
Gehenna was paved with.
It absolutely is. But you know what? You can't be brought to Besdin to be put to death because you were thinking to kill somebody. You know how many people, I can think of that I'd like to kill a lot of people, Sinwar, number one on the list. I don't get killed for that. Just thinking about it. Huh? You still don't get put to death for that. Okay, well, I'm just telling you, you can't be put to death. Yes, you probably is. It is a garmi or a grandma. They caused it to happen, correct, but they didn't do it. Not a direct thing. That's a difference in law. So now,
Yaakov mourned.
Yes.
Which of the brothers was obligated to do the same thing?
All of them.
Did they?
Well, they
I wasn't there. I don't know. I was a rabbi. They didn't ask me.
assumed
buying that?
Exactly. So
They
assuming
didn't see the Midianites sell them.
exactly.
That's
So they all
So
assumed
they
that
all could have said Shiva.
they said Chayara achalasu tarof taraf Yosef. That's it. Exactly. All right. Now that we have that background, now we can get Yosef when he sees the brothers down in Egypt and better understand
Why they didn't
what was
recognize
happening
him.
here. Okay? When they come down to Egypt, I'll let you go on to that. What does Yosef do when he sees them?
Acknowledged.
Not true. First, he does what? He gives them a lot of problems. What does he accuse them of being? Spies. There's meraglim atem. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go through why he did that, what his plan was, and so on, because it's different.
He doesn't acknowledge him as his brothers, that's what.
But he calls them spies. And then by Nakri, he ignores them. He makes believes he doesn't know them.
Because he wants
Correct.
his brothers to be afraid of him.
Could not whether afraid of
Keeps
him.
the upper hand.
Maybe there are many reasons. Right? Could be. Yeah. What about the brothers? What do they say when they see him?
It's a viceroy. It's
Right.
Egyptian.
They don't know who he is. I know. Now let me ask you a question, okay? I'll be a nice guy about this, which is hard for me. But it's Yom Kipper's coming out, you know. Yosef was 17 years old when he's taken away. Okay? The oldest son, the oldest brother, Reuven, was 6 years older, which means the others were, he was 23, others was 22, 20, so go back. So now time has come back, but there's only 6-year difference between the oldest to the youngest. And they couldn't recognize him? What about the kid, the brother who was a year older than him? They didn't recognize him? Oh, he had a beard. Oh, yeah, that'll do it. What? Again, let's use logic in this story. And so Chazal were very nice. Said, well, he had a beard, so they couldn't understand it. Come on, man. Why wouldn't they recognize him?
Conceptualize such.
Because they thought he was dead.
Right. And
You don't look.
They thought he was dead. They hadn't the foggiest dream that they'd find him here. So yeah, he had his fancy schmancy royal clothes and everything, like it says there that Paro dressed him up in it, and he had the beard and everything. But they had no idea in the first place ever that Yosef is still alive, let alone that he's the viceroy of Egypt. So that explains why, even though the years were not that different, they had no idea. Of course, couldn't expect that was him. Yeah. Even when he revealed himself, he asked the guy, "No, come closer. You can see that it's me." They couldn't believe it. Can't be. That helps us understand that problem, why they couldn't be recognized, because they never thought that he would be alive. So there you go. Why they did not understand it, and why then the story goes on. And when the story goes on, and of course, as we know, Yosef accuses them of being spies, accuses them of being spies. What does Yosef tell them to do? First of all, he throws them into prison, right? 3 days, it says that he throws them into mishmar, we'll call it prison. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Wasn't Yosef thrown into prison? Yeah. And he was also thrown in a prison in Egypt with right, when he was accused of, right. So, okay. Then he says, I'm a God-fearing man. That's what he says, Elokim ani oherei. Which, again, I've told you before, I'll continue telling it. The idea of, in the ancient world, being God-fearing doesn't mean that you go to Uman on Rosh Hashanah, but what it means is that I'm a moral person. There are certain basic things of a moral person, and we don't do that. Even Avimelech says that. I feel God. I wouldn't do these terrible things. He says, to put you in jail without knowing, So I tell you what I'm going to do. One of you will stay here like a hostage for me. If you claim you have a younger brother, and you can go home with enough food for the whole family, I will let you have the food. And then when you come back with your other brother, well, it'll be fine. That was the whole point, right? That's what he does. Well, I'm going to probably leave you with this.
Which is the other brother that was left?
Benjamin.
The youngest, right?
This was,
Tatala, that's it, yeah.
wait, Benjamin had come down?
Not yet. Not the first time. They said we have one to prove to prove the truth of their story, that they're not spies. It said we're one family. We even have a younger brother. By the way, any idea how young Tatala Benjamin was?
It was 2 years younger than Joseph.
Huh?
2 years younger than Joseph.
It was 2 years, but something like that. That's right. So when you think about him doing a Tatala, it was a man, but it's called the Na'ar. So we get this impression that he's a young guy. But
He's got lots of children.
look, right. My mother used to introduce me to others. Says, "This is the baby." Well, come on, Ma. My aunt, who had a very good sense of humor, used to say, she says, "Oh, did you see my baby?" And all of a sudden, this big bump comes moving into there. He says, but your youngest child, you always refer to as the baby, right? The baby, exactly. He's the baby. It's very common. Yeah, it is. So Binyamin was the baby. He was 30, 35. He was a baby. Okay, fine. And we know that Yosef was 30 years old when he was taken out of it, and he became the viceroy. So, like I said, Binyamin was about 2, 3 years younger, because he was born one day after they left Laban's house and back to Shechem, or actually after they went. Okay. This is why I want to tell you this, and we'll have. I just want to leave this with you to get you even more at the bottom. When they're all alone, after they're sent back, but sent back without one of the brothers. Anybody know which brother was kept back?
Kept back?
Yosef imprisons one of the brothers and takes the rest, lets the rest go home. No.
Naphtali ran.
No.
Didn't he run back to his
Shimon. Takes Shimon. Chazal say, very understandably, no, Shimon and Levi, they were the guys who destroyed the Shechem. So Yosef said, I'll take the most dangerous guy there, I'll keep him in prison. So the brothers come back, and they ain't too happy. And then when they come back and find out, while they're walking home, that the money that they paid for these food was in their bag, and now they're going to be accused of stealing of this thing. So now they're really atzoris. They had real problems. So listen to this. Vayamu ish el achiv. So each of them started mumbling about this. He says, we know why. Aval ashemim anachnu al achinu. We are guilty about our brother. What did he do? Asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho b'hitchanano eleinu. So we heard him. We saw him crying and begging from us when we had taken him, right? V'lo shamanu, but we didn't listen to him. Did they say, we sold him to the Shvelim? Did they say that that's what they did? That was the bad thing? No, that they didn't listen to him. So what does that tell you? They never sold him. If they had, they would have said that. The biggest crime they did was we didn't listen to him when he begged us to get out of the thing. And Al Kainba, that's why we're in such trouble. And then Reuven says, told you so, I told you so. That's what he says here. He says, Halo amarti alechem lemor al techetu vayeled. I told you not to harm the child, right? Below shma'atem, you didn't listen. And now damo hine nidrash. Now his blood is being paid for. In other words, his death was being called for. So here you have the clear proof that the brothers thought he was dead and that they never sold him. We're going to have to continue that on because this, the movie is over now. We got to have the second part later on. Okay?